just start. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bobby C, as Bobby C sees it, on Anonymous Addiction. And this podcast is, today we're going to, I have a special guest. She actually, we have Joey C. He's the reoccurring guest. And Andee knows Joey. But Andee is going to tell you everything about what she's doing in social media. I mean, she's phenomenal. And she is like a living example what I understand about this recovery industry today, creating our own programs. She's a living example of it. She's not tainted by other different types of programming, and she created her own and kind of programs her own mind, and that's her deal, is refocusing, redirecting a new mindset, and that's what she does. Andee, go ahead, take it away, Andee.
Bobby, thank you. That is what I do, actually. That's what I do. I am a mindset coach and a neurotransformational life coach. So I do both that work, and I work with people on helping them shift their mindsets to be able to achieve the things that they want to achieve. I'm also sober. So I want to just put that into the picture that I'm sober. I'm sober over a year and a half. I can't tell you how many days I'm sober. I don't count days. That's not a strategy that I ever adopted or that ever worked for me. If that works for you, great. I believe that people that are in recovery should do what works for them. And I think that that's how Bobby, you and I really connected, was the fact that we're doing it. We're doing it. I'm also sober. So I think one of the things that was big for me is that sobriety did not overtake my whole identity, nor did drinking. I mean, and I think what the big thing about letting go of drinking is that drinking does a lot of the times. People a lot of times have trouble pulling themselves away from drinking because of how much of their identity it overtakes. And what I do in my coaching, there's three main parts to it. Eliminating limiting beliefs is one. And the second part, the biggest part, is renegotiating your identity. I think that when you are in recovery or you've drank a long time, I never used drugs, but this can apply to anybody that has any type of addiction. I was a cigarette smoker a long time. I considered that an addiction. I associated that with my identity. I associated drinking with my identity. And I had to let go of that when I moved away and I stopped drinking. So now, yes, I'm sober, but I don't allow that to be an overlooming thing in my life. I just decided that my life was better without alcohol. Bobby knows the story. I stopped smoking after 18 years by reading Alan Carr's book, The Easy Way to Stop Smoking. And the way that it reframed my mind was, okay, your life is more positive without this. That was the gist of the book. And it takes you through every single point to why your life is easier if you don't do this. And then I kind of applied that to my drinking. But there were a lot of other things that went into sobriety and how I started, quote, creating my own program. And I don't know, Bobby, do you want me to continue or should I?
Well, we could, we could take
something. You want to stop me at some point?
Yeah, well, we'll take a break right there, just because we're going to keep on going on. I'm sure you're going to remember. Let me just tell the viewers. Let's see. I was just reading this. I'm finding out like years ago that I had dyslexia. I didn't realize how it impacted my whole life. That's a disability. It's just like, I think smoking actually is like a disability. It disabilitates us from doing things. So does drinking, so does these other habits. But they create challenges for us, and we can overcome these obstacles. Let's see, briefly tell why, I met Andee. Let me just say why I met Andee, why I'm bringing Andee on. I met Andee through a friend of mine who does the podcast with me, Joey C. And Andee found Joey. How she did, she'll tell you. And then Joey went on one of her podcasts. I listened to it. I emailed Andee and said, boy, I'd love to be on one of your podcasts. She accepted it. She said, yes, come on. It was like a that wasn't on. I'm telling you, because I've only been doing this about a year and a half. And every, what do they say? Every seed, no, every adversity, there's a seed of equivalent benefit. And
Mhm.
Andee's going to tell you about her podcast after she tells her story. I want her to tell the audience all the places that you can connect with her. She has many of them, and I'm on Facebook with her. I'm on Instagram. I follow Instagram. She's got so many different platforms. I want you to know all the platforms, so stay tuned for that. Back to you, Andee. Continue. Go ahead.
So what part were we at? So we were talking about, do you want to talk about us connecting, or should we go back to
No,
talking a little bit more?
Go back to your story, and then we'll talk about connecting.
So I think I was talking about, here's me trying to kind of keep it in line with where we started, but I think I was just talking about the idea of when
Identity.
I stopped drinking. Identity. Yes. Identity. So much tied up in identity, guys. So much tied up in identity. People have what we do in our lives is that we just create these big stories about ourselves, and they're all made up by us. So what happened when I know exactly where I left off now. Thank you, Bobby. When I stopped drinking, I went straight ahead with this idea that my life is going to be better without it. But then at the same time, almost serendipitously, the universe sent me my first mentor. He didn't know I was sober. I never even brought it up because I never even thought that it was a thing. He was a coach, he was a life coach, and I reached out to him for help. And I reached out to him for help because I was stuck in my job. That was really why. And he sent me a book called Loyalty to Your Soul. And it was not a sobriety book, but it introduced to me a couple of concepts. One being that an unresolved issue is anything that disturbs your peace. And it talked about how things like drinking, things like being overweight, things like using drugs, these are not issues within themselves. These are the result of unresolved issues. I had a person that I know was reaching out for help on social media just recently because they're new to sobriety and they were feeling like they wanted to drink. And I sent them a message and I said, it's not, you don't really want to drink. You're having a difficult emotion right now that you're having trouble sorting through. And that's what that was. And by reading this book that my mentor had sent me, I realized I was stuck in this job. And I went to him for help. I'm stuck in this job. I need to get out of this job. My life is awful because I'm in this job. And I realized about 2 months into sobriety, when I had a strong craving to drink, that it was because I was about to head into my job, which I didn't like. And I had to make changes to get out of that job, and they were uncomfortable. And because I didn't want to deal with the uncomfortable, the discomfort of leaving the job, I wanted to go get obliterated instead. And I thought about how many times did I do that? How many times did I don't like my life? I don't like my money situation. And I go get drunk instead. Or I come from a dysfunctional family. There's mental illness in my family. Every time something pops up with one of the members of my family who is mentally ill, I don't want to deal with the emotions. I just want to go get drunk instead. So reading this book that had nothing to do with sobriety actually clued me into the fact that I don't drink because I have a problem with alcohol. Sure, alcohol is addictive and I was addicted to it, but I had long gone through the withdrawal. Like alcohol withdrawal is what, like up to 10 days? Like after that, you're not addicted to alcohol anymore, any more than like when you quit smoking, you're not addicted to nicotine after 72 hours, pretty much. Everything after that is the psychological reinforcement, the psychological behavior that's tied to your environment. And the rest is you're just going through the inner work that you've been putting off. Like there's that Jimmy Breslin quote, when you stop drinking, you have to deal with the marvelous personality that got you drinking in the first place. And like, so all that stuff that you've been repressing for years and years and years and years and years and years and years starts coming up. And people don't want to deal with that. So going back to identity, because you brought up identity, we'll use excuses like, well, I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those people that's sober. I'm not one of those airy fairy people. I'm not one of those. I can tell you like all these names of things that people will say. I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not that. I identify so closely with bar culture and this and that. And that's not really what it is. I mean, what it really is that you don't want to deal with the hard stuff. So you're falling back on an identity that you've cradled yourself in and that you've created. You've built the cocoon for yourself so that and that's what your identity basically is. You've constructed it. It's walls that you've constructed. You look like you want to say something. So I'm going to let you, because
you know what? Wow, that's why I was going to break in right there, because I can relate to that 100%. You know, it doesn't matter how much, you know what? I love that you said that you don't count time.
I don't count time.
I love that, because in some of my podcasts, I'm going to be talking about the multi-trillion-dollar recovery industry trap prison. Okay, because that's what it is. There's a lot of reasons why I wanted to get you on, and one of them was because, did you ever go to a Alcoholics Anonymous meeting?
I did not.
Okay. She did not, ladies and gentlemen. Did not, ladies and gentlemen. Now, have you been to any 12-step recovery programs? 12-step recovery programs?
Not.
Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, listen to
not. I'm sorry.
No, this is the validation. This validates why I'm having this podcast. Okay. It's this myth that we think, you know what? You know, one of the biggest addictions in recovery is recoveryism, is the addiction of recovery. Okay. And they know that. They know that. So the identity, Andee was talking about the identity. I had to raise my hand. And I know once in a while you'll say the word alcoholic, but this is one of the identity things that I had to get out of. Raising my hand in a meeting, millions of people every day raise their hand and say, I am an alcoholic. That's an identity. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not an alcoholic. You are a human being, being human in this journey called life, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, I wanted to stop you right there, because that's the whole reason why I'm doing this, to show people. Now, I'm not telling people to run. If you're in an AA meeting or any other 12-step meeting or any type of group, you don't have to run, but think, question, observe, and become aware, you know, and expand your consciousness. And it's proven fact that millions of people recover on their own with their own program. But people aren't talking about that a lot. So that's why I got Andee on this podcast. Now, if you can remember where we were, because
I'm going to jump in. Because the podcast that we did together, I had a friend of mine comment on something that I wrote and said to me, I was just listening to a podcast that you did recently, and I knew he was talking about the one that we did together, and about the element of powerlessness, and how when he was in, I think he was in NA, to be honest. I don't think it was AA. But I don't know, because he never really shared that information with me. It's really none of my business. But he said he just never was willing to accept the whole disease model, that there's something wrong, that I'm powerless. And he said, you know, listening to the podcast really made him, I mean, it had helped him. He had already come to the realization, but it kind of helped him along. And I really I just went a completely opposite way with it. I went into this mindset of embracing my power rather than saying I didn't have any, because when I was drinking, I didn't have any like that. When I was drinking, that took my power away. Stopping drinking was what brought my power back. I always had power. And there's hard science to these things. Like, why are we drinking in social occasions? Well, we always were able to do it, but then, you know, alcohol made it a little bit easier. So we started doing that. And then after 20 years, we forgot how to do it on our own. We forget so many things that we just innately know how to do. And I just wanted to step back into my own power. And when you say things to people like that they're powerless, or that they're, you know, it just takes away their agency as humans. You don't need somebody to, let me take a step back. I think that 12-step programs are great for community. And I think that people need community. And when they start on their sobriety journeys, they often don't know where to find it. So it's an easy place for them to just access community. But that doesn't have to be the only community. There are plenty of other options to 12-step programs that can provide community. And I will say the word alcoholic just because it's easy for people to hear and understand. But as a person that had a problem with alcohol, just taking that word out of it, I was inclined to isolate in everything. Like I didn't want to. And that's kind of why Bobby was saying I'm so active on social media. I'm so active on social media now because I wasn't for such a long time because of the shame when I was drinking. So I didn't want community, but community is the best way forward. So if you're going to find as much value in community, it doesn't have to be a 12-step program. It can be any sort of community. I found a great community on Reddit when I stopped smoking, r/stop smoking. I went on that sub every single day. That was community. When I stopped drinking, same thing, r/stop drinking. I went on that sub every day. There were people there. I communicated with them, but I didn't need anybody to say, oh, there's something wrong with you. Because when the human brain, if you tell somebody that you're just like, this is why I don't count days. If you tell somebody you're going without something, your brain is so smart. It will think, oh my God, I'm going without something. And then it will immediately translate that thing to a positive. And all it will do is count the time until it can have it again. So if you're counting days, if counting days works for you, good for you. I hope that it continues to work. But for the people that it's not working for, if every single day you see like, I have 700 days sober, I haven't had alcohol in 700 days. And it's just, when's the branch going to break? Whereas when you realize every day gets better after you had a drink, I will tell you guys that are listening to this, every single day since I've had a drink has been better than the day before. I've created so much in a year and a half plus. It's over a year and a half, but I don't know where I'm at. I just know that I'll be 2 years the day after Christmas of this year, because I know it's the day after Christmas. I just know every day is better. And isn't it better to think about that everything is improving with every minute that passes, rather than think, oh God, it's been so long since I've had, since what? Since I sent an inappropriate text to somebody at 3:00 in the morning, since I said goodnight to a cab driver at 7 a.m., since I made myself puke before I went to sleep so I didn't die. Like, it's been so long since these horrible,
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like every day is good now. Why am I going to be counting days trying to romanticize a fucking old lover I left behind that should have been gone a long time ago? I have a business now. I have people that I help every single day. I have a life that I love. I do what I want. I have a huge community, huge support system. What did I have when I was drinking? Nothing. I had nothing.
Let's talk about that. Now let's get that off, because we didn't even go into that. I want you to tell everybody all the platforms they could find you at. From the beginning, from the first thing you started, and just tell us all and how we can get in contact with you.
So how I started was that my good friend from undergrad has been kind of a mentor to me. Her name's Ash Amberjay. She's an internet entrepreneur, and she's all about
Ash. I listened to you and this girl over here yesterday. Amazing.
She's brilliant.
Okay.
She's just so brilliant.
What is it? What's this? The Middle Finger Project.
The Middle Finger Project.
Okay.
Yeah. She's brilliant. We went to undergrad together. And I reached out to her. Again, this is like reaching out to people that are not necessarily in the sober community, just reaching out to people, being willing to reach out to people in your support system. And she's one of my good friends, and she's in my support system. And I said to her, because I know that she's been blogging on the internet since 2009, and I'm a writer. So I said, what do I do, Ash? Like, I wanted to start changing, I need to start changing things in my life. And she said, Andee, start writing publicly. She's like, just start writing publicly. When you write publicly, you not only get to really understand how you feel about things, but you will create a force that will pull people towards you that need to hear your message. Bobby, that's why we're here. Because it wasn't just the writing. I created the podcast and things like that. So I did. I started writing publicly. I started like an old side project that is now over, right at the beginning of COVID, just to get my feet wet with writing. And then I started on Medium, and I started writing about sobriety on Medium. And then I started Get the Fuck Off in November of last year. So for everybody listening, it's getthefuckoff.com. All my blogs, my podcasts are there. Most of them are about changing your mindset to achieve things that you want. And that can range from a variety of topics. I do talk about drinking. I do talk about weight loss. I also talk about things like trauma and things that you went through with your family. If you are somebody that struggles with alcoholism, you probably have some trauma. We all have trauma. We don't all have big T trauma. Some of us have small T trauma, but we all have trauma. A lot of people will go through their lives having serious issues because somebody teased them when they were 7. Like, it's okay that you have trauma because everybody has trauma. So I write about trauma a lot. I also send out emails once a week. So if you go to getthefuckoff.com, please subscribe to my email list, because it's like getting free coaching once a week. I send out something at least once a week to all my subscribers about these things. And all my writing is there. As for social media, I have a pretty active social media. I'm _ get the fuck off on Instagram, because without the underscore was taken. So _ get the fuck off on Instagram. And also at micro steps forward on Instagram, because my third part of my coaching, which I talked about earlier, is micro steps forward. A lot of times people in anything, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be, I want to start a business, to I want to lose 10 pounds. People are always wanting to take things in big, unmanageable bites. Like, if you ever saw the movie Matilda, that kid trying to eat that whole cake, that's like the size of him. Like, people want to do that. And any change is micro steps. Like, when I first started my business, honestly, like, some days the micro step was writing 2 sentences of copy for my website. Like, people are like, oh, you started this big thing. You have all this content. You have all these people that you're talking to now. You have clients. You have this, you that. One of my first steps was write a sentence today. That's how it has to start. That's how it has to start. Like, when you start anything at all, if you're listening to this, I know, Bobby, we're in anonymous addiction. So if you're starting this because you're having a problem with addiction, maybe today you just don't, you might have to chunk today down into 10-minute intervals. Like, and that's okay. I've had to. I've had to take days 10 minutes at a time. I've had to do that stuff. This all starts with micro steps, like micro step. And people, I want to go off of that also. People that are struggling with addiction and stopping, especially like if you're in the mindset, like you're going into a 12-step program and people are telling you you're powerless, you're this, and you're free. How do you feel about yourself? I don't know. The way to do it is, you got to celebrate yourself. It's not easy to do it as somebody in recovery, but if you make it through, if you just had the hardest 45 minutes of your life, and you'll have times like that in the beginning, fuck it, get on Amazon and buy yourself a present. Like, I bought myself so much nonsense when I was giving up.
Good.
I did.
Good.
What people are always like, oh, they always want to punish themselves. No. You've got to sit there and reward yourself every step of the way on your journey. And if you don't feel well enough to do that, then go find somebody that's going to help. Because it's just these micro steps every single day, And so that's my micro steps forward on Instagram. That was my second one, but _ get the fuck off is the biggest one. Please, everybody follow me. And I also am responsive to DMs. So I would love DMs. Send me DMs.
No, I really, the writing, getting back to the writing is really beautiful. I mean, to be able to do what you do, to take all that time and effort and energy, like wherever the attention goes, the energy flows, and you put your energy and your love into this writing with the blog, which is really beautiful. And you give a person a chance, you give another person a chance to validate their stuff, like you had me on, and I shared some things and kind of talking back and forth. We have a lot of like-minded interests and like-minded thinking. And I believe it's all about the thinking. It should be anonymous thinking, not anonymous thinking, not anonymous whatever. And my podcast, my anonymous addiction, sooner or later I'm going away from that. Really, that's why I have it on there, because I'm going from me personally. Me and Andee, we're not anonymous. We don't have to be anonymous. We have nothing to
Yeah.
hide. We're
Yeah.
actually not addicted to alcohol or tobacco anymore. So we don't have to talk about it, because that's a thing of the past. So we don't have to constantly focus on that. And that's what I'm trying to convey to the audience about this recovery trap, where these coins are, it's a business. Now, another reason why I like Andee, because she's not a hierarchy. See, Andee's one person. It's like a friend to a friend. They call them sponsors, mentors, coven people. Call them anything, but I say a friend to a friend. Now, Andee has a business, but she has a business that is just her. I'm sure she'd like to grow, but she's not a hierarchy pyramid. She's not like taking from volunteerism and using volunteer people to grow their organization where the money goes to the top. And I talk a lot about that. I talk a lot about deprogramming and reprogramming ourselves and creating our own program. And pandemic glow ups.
Oh, pandemic glow-ups. That's on Facebook.
That's right.
Yes, I forgot about that. How did I forget about my own group? I have a group on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/pandemic glow-ups. And everybody is more than welcome to join. I started it small, just a few members, because I really wanted to cultivate a positive energy space. I think positive energy is so important. If you are struggling with something and you feel like your world is a whirlwind of darkness most of the time, it's probably has something to do with the company that you keep. And that's okay. That's okay. I want to let you all know that that's okay. But I know when I was in parts of my life where I was feeling the worst about myself, misery really loves company and negativity is infectious. So if you're feeling bad, the people around you should be the people that are uplifting you. And if they're not, if they're just dragging you down into the abyss, you need to have a place. And that's kind of why I started that. More along the lines with community is that people need a positive place. And we were talking about, anonymity and how you and I don't need to be anonymous. I don't need to be anonymous. I'm in a group. I'm not going to say it's a mastermind group. It's a coaching community. And this one person came on and was talking a couple of weeks ago. And I wrote this on my Instagram. They said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I keep airing my dirty laundry." And I wrote, "There's no such thing as airing your dirty laundry. The world is a washing machine. How do you think that you're going to feel better? There is no dirty laundry. We don't have dirty laundry. We've just been struggling with trauma. So, and everyone has it. And we're all trying to point at each other, shaming each other that we don't have it. Everyone has it. And what people don't understand in the anonymous groups is they're saying they're all kind of in this thing together saying, oh, there's something wrong with us and we need to be together because there's something wrong with us. No, you just have a socially unacceptable form of dealing with your trauma. You could be a workaholic. Your marriage could be falling apart. Your kids could completely hate you because you're not in their lives, but workaholism is celebrated by society, so people will let that go. You could be an overachiever, like constantly chasing achievements on an achievement treadmill to deal with your trauma, and that's celebrated by society. So you just happen to have one of the not so celebrated ways of dealing with your trauma. But everybody fucking has trauma. Every single person. Those people that you are looking at on the internet, that you are like comparing yourself to, that are just have all of these crazy accomplishments, you don't know what their life looks like on the inside. They could have horrible friendships and familial relationships because they're never present, because they're running from their trauma. So don't think that there's something wrong with you, because there isn't. People like to point and be like, oh, there's something wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with you. Like there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah,
Everybody has this. This is the shared human experience. We all
that's
have this shit.
exactly human beings being human. Okay. And, I agree with that 100% because look, you go into these groups, you become addicted to this identity. And like you said, so what separates the Addicts Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Porn Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Sugar Anonymous? I don't care what anonymous you want to say. What do we all have in common? Of
We're
every
humans.
program,
And we all have traumas.
we all have us in common. I'm
Yeah,
in common.
we're humans.
So exactly right. A lot of people are talking about the trauma today, and we all suffer it, like you mentioned, in certain degrees to another. And I don't like to talk about personal things on the air. I don't. I'm very careful what I share. That's another thing. When you go into these groups, you share very, very personal things about maybe my family. My family. I don't talk about my family or my children or my grandchildren and stuff like that because it's not my obligation to tell the world about them or about the lives or the trauma that maybe we have been in, but I could talk about myself. Okay. I'm not hiding nothing about myself. Okay. Because I believe I used to run to a meeting because I was running from responsibility. I actually, back 37 years ago, when I first came into the rooms of recovery, I've been in 37 years in this recovery community. I used to run because I had no skills. I didn't even know how to say
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to say I love you. This is 37 years ago. I was in my 30s. Did not even know how to say I love you because my parents didn't know how to say it, And I'm not blaming my parents. We get things from our parents, and my parents got things from their parents. So I'm not blaming anybody. I actually had to teach my mom and dad how to hug, because I learned how to hug in the programs, in the communities, and learned how to give some love. So I didn't have skills. I didn't have any tools, any strategies, even dealing with my marriage, my children. I didn't know how to communicate properly, And I think a lot of it had to do with maybe the dyslexic or maybe insecurities or trauma that I maybe suffered, but whatever. I can't blame it on anything. All I know is that I had the ability when I said yes to help. I raised my hand and said 37 years ago, I said yes to help. And all these pointers, my wife was a pointer, her mother even prayed for me, all these pointers, my friend Lonnie came in, he was a pointer, all these pointers to the way. But what I found out eventually that I am the way, like
You are.
if
Yeah.
Jesus, said what he was saying, I am the way, he was saying, you say that because you are the way. Okay.
You're the way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you are. And you also, you said yes to help. And then you found that, and you were able to, and you knew that you were the way, because other people can point you in. You need, how do I want to really say this? You do need other people.
Yes.
But you have all the answers.
Yes,
You
we
have
do.
all the answers. The answers are in you. You have the answers. And it seems so elusive to people when they first start with this, but you have the answers, and you'll be able to retrieve those, but they have to come from you. I think, did you and I connect about Wayne Dyer? Are we Wayne Dyer
Well,
connected?
yeah. I picked up one of his books, Erroneous Zone, 37 years ago. So Wayne is, I dipped and dabbed in all types of
All the stuff.
all types of stuff. We
He
talked
said-
about it.
We talked about it. Wayne Dyer, I'm just going to quote him. He said, responsibility is to respond with ability. And I always say, and I didn't, I pulled this from him and from a couple of other people, is that, none of it was your fault. Okay. It wasn't your fault, but it's your responsibility. And you took responsibility, and I took responsibility. And when you're talking about, okay, your parents, you had to teach your parents how to hug. Like, I'm not going to say that I haven't taught my parents things, because we don't always get what we need in life. And anybody that's out there struggling with anything, it's probably because they didn't get something that they needed. Well, if you're standing around waiting for someone else to give it to you, they're not going to. Like this is one of the hardest truths that I ever received from my mentor. My first coach, I love him more than I have words to express, but he said, "No one is coming to save you." And I was
That's
abrasive as fuck, this motherfucker. But I no one was.
You know, let me just stop there.
Me.
You know what? That's the hardest pill to swallow. You know, the red pill or the blue pill. It's the hardest pill to swallow because we as society want people to take care of us. We want them to give us the answers. We want them to protect us, take care of us. That's why we run to these meetings. We get addicted to these meetings because we don't really believe that we're responsible. We believe the meeting is responsible. So we're giving over our will, our life, our care, and all our creativity over to a group, one group. Now, I believe, like you said, help is the point of it. But yes, I can't deny the help that I was provided. I'm not going to deny them. I'm not going to deny that my wife wasn't helpful to me. AA wasn't helpful to me. It was a stepping stone. A stepping stone. I just want to mention now, make sure you subscribe to Anonymous Addiction down here, press subscribe. And we have about 40 minutes. We started at 10:50, Andee. So if we can, we're going to try to end this podcast in 40 minutes. I don't know how much time we have left. So how about if we start winding down, we probably have another 5 minutes or 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
I'm all about it. How else can I better serve your listeners? That's a good question.
You know what, just being present here on this podcast. I mean, they can contact you in so many different ways. They're not going to, this ain't the last time they're going to hear from you. So, and look, we keep on planting seeds. We never know when the seed is going to develop, when the seed is going to mature. It could be 5 years from now. I hate to say it, but we might not be the one they give the credit to, even though we may be the one they heard it from. So it doesn't matter. See, it doesn't really matter. I had a person the other, sounds like I'm bragging or tipping my horn or something, but my wife told me that her girlfriend said, this guy's got he stopped drinking years ago, the day he met me, after the day he met me. Now, I didn't have much to do with it. He did, but I maybe helped point away. I may have triggered something, but this is like 19 years later, Now, if she didn't even mention it, I wouldn't know. But does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. We're planting the seeds. I don't care how many viewers we get here. If I get one, my whole thing is to pass this stuff on to the next generations, my grandchildren. I have 5 beautiful grandchildren. Okay. I want them to be, I want to be able to face them where they are today, not name them, label them, condemn them and say, you got problems, you better change, blah, blah, blah. Look, if you're listening to this, if you're still using or drinking, you're listening to this, so that means something. Maybe you don't want it right now, but you may think you need something. Okay. So that's a start right there. I think Andee mentioned about reading something while you're even smoking to help you.
Honestly, I think that that's super powerful, Bobby, about the ripple effect. And I have to just clear up a couple of misconceptions. I think people that are still using or drinking, that there's a lot of fear with reaching out for help. I think because people are afraid that they're going to have to, people are not really afraid of reaching out for help. They want help. They don't want to deal with the feelings that they're going to have about themselves when they do. They feel like they're going to be a big failure or that there's something broken with them. And there's just not. There's nothing broken with you. And a lot of times people think that people who are healed are in this holier than thou position. And that's not the case either. Like, that's just not the case. I promise you, if you are having trouble, if you want to get sober, if you want to get clean, if you reach out to somebody that is, they are going to help you. You think you're setting yourself up, because the human brain loves to do this. This is a principle from coaching, because I'm not, I don't just work with people in recovery. I work with all types of people doing all types of things. And one of the biggest things is that it's not about reaching out, because you're afraid of what you're going to feel if somebody rejects you. That's what it is. Like, people are so afraid. They're like, I just can't handle the rejection. And that's what keeps people scared to reach out for help. And that's not going to happen. And you know what? If on the weird chance that it does, which I don't think it will, because I've never really heard, if you reach out to somebody in a sober community, somebody like me or Bobby, that's openly using their voice to say, I will support you, and you reach out to that person, they will support you. They're not lying. You reach out to your friend Ted, who's sitting on the bar stool, passed out after 14 shots of Jameson. He might not support you, but Bobby and I are going to support you, because we're here saying we're going to support you. So we're going to support you, and we're going to point you in all the right directions. Do not be afraid that that you just won't be able to handle that rejection, because you're a strong person, and people are here to saying that they will help. There's an abundance of help available. It doesn't seem like that. It feels like there isn't, but there is, but there's so much, and it's just unfamiliar. And when we're in a position where when we've been doing the same behavior for ever and ever and ever, it's just, the unfamiliar feels really, really, really foreign. And I don't know if your listeners know this, but after the age of 35, we pretty much carry all of our emotion and energy in our bodies. We don't really carry it in our brains. So when we go to make a change, we feel it in our bodies. Yes. The crippling anxiety is in your body.
Yes.
And I have a lot of tried and true strategies to be able to help people get that out of their bodies. That's what I just did, an intensive certification program on neurotransformational coaching. Stumbling on my words, but it's in your body. And, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about that, about how we store that energy and we store that thing, so that way, when we try to make a change, our body physically reacts, because our brain thinks anything. Our brain this is a little bit of a tangent, but just bear with me, listeners. Our brain does not want us to deviate from our routines at all, because it is programmed to keep us alive. And it knows that if we do the same thing over and over again, we've lived thus far, so therefore we'll continue to live if we do that. Even if it's not serving us, even if it's alcohol, even if it's poisoning us, our brain doesn't care. It knows the same over and over and over again keeps us alive. So when you go to try to break a pattern, you're going to feel it in your body. Yes. And you're going to feel anxiety, because your body will be like, if I give you enough anxiety, you're not going to make a change today.
Right. Changes. You know what? The thing is, though, change is inevitable. I don't care. It may not be you, but it's going to be inevitable. You're getting older. That's change. When I talk about addiction, I'm not talking about alcohol and just alcohol and drugs. How about addicted to thinking, addicted to the trauma, addicted to drama, addicted to porn, addicted to relationships, addicted to sugar, addicted to bad. It's about habits. Like you said, repetition is the mother of skill, and it can be the mother of brainwashing also. I think we're at 40 minutes, Andy. I think we're going to have to say goodbye to the audience. It's been a pleasure. We stay on.
Great.
We'll stay on for a couple minutes, and we'll chat right after this podcast. So everyone, take care. Don't forget to subscribe and check out Andee. All her podcasts, they're everywhere. You want to mention
getthefuckoff.com.
Right on. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to sign off now, and I'm going to stop right now.